So at the time, my dad was a single dad, and so he and my mom were divorced by that point, and I lived with my dad full time, and so I was his primary caregiver at that time. So everything was on me, in terms of make because he had a broken leg and a couple of broken bones, and so he couldn't really walk and get around. And I was a teenager, so I mean, I was a cheerleader. I was in high school. I had a job. I mean, I had a life, and so I had to minimize some of those things to be a caregiver, a full-time caregiver. And then when, the resolve came, I'm like, well, that just doesn't seem fair. I know what you went through because I was there doing all of these things.
Hello, and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with attorneys at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by the lovely Aura Taylor, who runs a law firm down in Georgia. Aura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I am doing very well as well. Thank you very much. Before we get started, I'm going to jump over and actually show your site for everyone. So here it is. This is the Taylor Law Firm ATL.com, the Taylor Law Firm ATL.com. Very easy phone number. It's 866 Win Law 1. That seems pretty straightforward. I do like the vanity URLs. The Taylor Law Firm is a Georgia personal injury practicing firm in Atlanta, Marietta, Douglasville, with clients throughout the state. The firm handles car accidents, commercial truck accidents, rideshare, pedestrian, premise liabilities, catastrophic injury, wrongful death cases, and with a particular emphasis on identifying every liable party and every available layer of insurance cover. The firm distinguishes itself through direct attorney access, litigation readiness, and frequent communication. So if you have been injured and you are in anywhere down in the Georgia area, please feel free to reach out to them. And again, we will have contact information for Aura and her law firm down below in the comments of this video or the podcast, wherever you are. But again, that is the Taylor Law Firm ATL, like Atlanta, the Taylor Law Firm ATL.com. And it's a good looking website. You can see the policy limit queen. We'll talk about that a little bit and some of the branding she does. I think that's a fun way to style yourself there. So again, that is what we're doing today. Before we get started, however, we are going to read from our sponsors. Our first sponsor today is Groove Pages. Now, this is interesting because this has been a long time sponsor and Groove is evolving. They're actually becoming scale.gg, but the general gist is the same. And so what is the general gist of Groove Funnels, now scale.gg, is this. Running an online business shouldn't mean paying for 12 different tools before you've even made a sale. And that's where Groove or scale.gg comes in. Groove gives entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers one single platform for funnels, for checkouts, for emails, for memberships, for e-commerce, for blogs, for webinars, affiliates, automation, and more. There's no credit card. There's no trial that flips. There's no monthly software bill to get started. Literally, the way that they work is just a small platform fee whenever you actually sell something. So stop duct taping your business together with expensive subscriptions. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to get started for free today. That's theattorneypost.com/groove. And again, you can get started completely free, no credit card needed. Last time I checked. Now they're literally making changes to this right now. So will they make shifts in the future? I don't know, but I love their platform. I've used it for a long time, so I recommend it to my listeners. Our second sponsor for today is Rank with News. When someone searches for you, for your company, for your firm, what do they actually see? Is it just your website, or do they see real credibility, trust, and authority? Because the businesses getting chosen today aren't just visible, they're validated, and that's where Rank with News comes in. Rank with News helps feature you, your firm, your business in major media outlets like Business Insider, Yahoo Finance, AP News, and more. So when prospects look you up, they don't just find you, they find that they trust you. This isn't about running more ads, it's about owning your reputation at the exact moment when it matters the most. Visit Rank with News to see how this works. It's rankwith.news or rankwithnews.com to see how it works. It's basically like guaranteed search engine optimization. Apparently they'll run an ad or run a story for you and it'll hit page one of Google in under 2 weeks, usually safely, organically, and oftentimes permanently, which is very, very cool. And again, it also leads to people being persuaded in working with you, which is very cool. So again, please visit our sponsors. We'll have links to them down at the bottom of the description as well. But that is scale.gg and rankwith.news. All righty, and then I need to get my old Zoom. My Zoom is being very slow today, so I apologize for that. There we go. And drag that back out of the way. All right, so again, here is my guest. This is Aura Taylor. Today's guest, Aura Taylor, is the founder of the law firm that bears her name, the Taylor Law Firm, and the Atlanta personal injury attorney known as the Policy Limit Queen. Aura she was born in the United States in the Virgin Islands and moved to Atlanta early in the 1990s. She earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from Georgia State University, an MBA from Clayton State University, and her law degree from Georgia State University College of Law. Her path into personal injury law began when she was 16 and her father was nearly killed after a Firestone tire disintegrated while he was driving. She watched him endure serious injuries, pressure from a major corporation, and ultimately an inadequate settlement, an experience that shaped her determination to represent injured people against insurers and corporations. Aura opened the Taylor firm in 2018, right before everything shut down. Today, she focuses heavily on serious injuries, trucking, commercial vehicle accidents, rideshare, high-value insurance claims, etc. The firm reports recoveries including $2 million premise liability results, 900,000 automobile accidents, etc. You can see more on their website. So, Aura, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Justin, for having me.
I'm
Pleasure to
very
be
happy to
here.
have you. So that was a mouthful, and I apologize for that, but I just wanted to get through everything. But I'm sure that was just the 10,000 foot overview, just the high level stuff. So my very first question, Aura, is just this: what did I miss? Tell me about who you are. What should people know about Aura Taylor?
Yeah, so I am extremely family oriented. I have two children, and I love spending time with my teenager. I have a teenage boy, and I love spending time with him, just talking. He's so inquisitive, and he wants to be an attorney. So we talk about my work a lot. So I love to talk about the firm and work. I sometimes can't turn it off, but we love to talk about that. And when I'm not, at the firm, advocating for clients, I'm kind of a homebody. People think like I have this majorly exciting life and I'm always going to galas and this and that. And I mean, I do that stuff when I have to, but I prefer to be at home, curled up in the bed and just getting a mental break because I have to make sure that I'm always showing up at 100% for my clients. So I like to spend a lot of time quiet and alone because I'm talking all day. And so I like to be quiet when I can.
I understand that completely. Now, you have a couple of kids. Do they think it's interesting or weird or funny or strange that mom is on a billboard in town, or do they not really
They
think about it?
do. So, my daughter, she's adult. So, it's not really so much for her. But my teenager, kids at school would say, "Oh my God, is that your mom on the radio?" Or I saw your mom on the billboard, "Oh my God." And he's like, "Yeah, but I don't want to talk about that." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he thinks it's cool, but he doesn't like to talk about it. He doesn't like people to ask him questions. So he's kind of real low key about it.
That's totally fine. I get that. So
Right.
let me ask you this. Give me a quick pitch for your firm. Now, obviously, I know you do PI. I know you do it
Mhm.
in Atlanta. I talked
Mhm.
about it a little bit in the intro. But if I didn't know who you were, if we had 30 seconds or a minute in an elevator, give me your elevator pitch for your firm. What do you do? Who do you serve? Where are they
Yeah.
found? And why do people choose to work with you, Aura?
Yeah, so we handle solely personal injury and wrongful death cases throughout the entire state of Georgia. So we're located in the Atlanta area, but we handle cases throughout the entire state of Georgia and Florida. And we help anybody that's been injured due to somebody, else's negligence. And so what makes us different than other law firms is we never take more than our clients. And so just put real simply, if we have to reduce that attorney's fee to make sure that the client is walking away with the most, then that's what we do. And I think that that's a testament to our commitment to our clients, and that makes us different, I think, from other firms. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it or, illegal. I mean, it's legal to do, but I just don't think it's ethical to take more than your client. And so I think it's just a testament to what makes us different here at the Taylor Law Firm.
Yeah, gotcha. I've always appreciated the injury law firm model. A lot of my listeners know I deal with a lot of injury attorneys on a regular basis. They're my most common guests, in fact. And I love the model because you guys you're a stopgap, right? You fill a necessary need. You help people when they're at their lowest, sometimes the
Absolutely.
lowest they've ever been. Loss of life, loss of limb, loss of work, loss of
Absolutely.
job, loss of mobility, and they have no money coming in and they're just in a panic. And you guys are the stopgap. And a lot of people don't even realize you take on cases and it's usually on a contingency fee basis, I'm assuming. And there's no cost to even talk to you to get the help. And if there's costs to do the litigation,
That's
you
all
guys
us.
take all of that all on you on the
Absolutely.
likelihood that you're going to win it. So I've always
Absolutely.
respected. I've always respected the injury law firm model. I think it's a very good model. I
Hmm.
think it's a fair free market uh, expression of the law, and I like
Absolutely.
it.
And I have to remind clients, like, I understand your frustration with the time or different things that are happening, right? But to your point, we're taking all the risk initially. So we
Mhm.
have a vested, interest in making sure that we deliver for you. We want to deliver for you just as much as you want us to. So I think it's a mutually beneficial working relationship. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. So you can trace your interest back to the personal injury your father himself
Absolutely.
encountered. And tell me a little bit more about that experience. When did that
Yeah.
experience become more than just a painful memory? And when did it become a calling?
So I think it was shortly thereafter. So at the time, my dad was a single dad, and so he and my mom were divorced by that point, and I lived with my dad full time, and so I was his primary caregiver at that time. So everything was on me, in terms of because he had a broken leg and a couple of broken bones, and so he couldn't really walk and get around. And I was a teenager, so I mean, I was a cheerleader. I was in high school. I had a job. I mean, I had a life. And so I had to, minimize some of those things to be a caregiver, a full-time caregiver. And then when, the resolve came, I'm like, well, that just doesn't seem fair. I know what you went through because I was there doing all of these things. And so where's the compensation for that? And it just didn't seem fair. So I think it was shortly after that, being front and center in being the person that's taken care of, if you will, because he didn't have a spouse, and so it was me. And
Yeah.
so I think that that changed the tide for me.
Were you interested in law at all before that, or was this kind of where everything shifted?
I'm gonna be honest, no, I don't know that I had ever thought about it. I mean, maybe in passing, but nothing to the extent of I'm going to law school and this is my mission. Absolutely not. I mean, no, not seriously. No. Mm-mm.
So you've been in business as a law firm since 2018, which means you're
Yes,
going on like 8 or 9 years right now,
yes,
which is great. You
yes.
chose a very unique time to start your business, obviously, because you were in business for about a year and a half, and then the whole
Right.
world
And
just
then COVID.
ground
Yeah.
to a halt. Tell me about your experience with the pandemic, especially down in Atlanta and in
Hmm.
Georgia in general. Did did you panic? Was it like I don't even know what's gonna happen? I remember I talked to an attorney in New York City, and his office was in a building that regularly saw, I think it was over 128,000 people every day walk through it. And in the height of the pandemic, it saw about 128 people walk through it, which was crazy. And he's
Yeah.
like, the good news is no one's getting in accidents. The bad news is nobody's getting in accidents,
Right. Right.
which is kind of a double-edged sword. But tell me about that. How did it affect you guys? Did you have to shut down your firm? Did you go all virtual? Did it change the way you
Yeah.
interface with clients and the
So
courts? Just talk about that.
Yeah, so it did change the way that we, interacted with clients. But, the good thing about personal injury is there, there's always been other mediums to speak to your clients. So, you've always had the telephone, right? But then now you've got these Zoom meetings, and there's always been, other ways. I just don't think we utilize it as much. And so I think what it did was it just shifted how we communicated, but we were always communicative. And so it really didn't change the business in terms of, um, anything in terms of financial or anything. We really didn't take a huge hit because what you have to understand is with personal injury cases, and you kind of spoke about this earlier, right? There's a life cycle. And so you could pick up a case today, but by the time that case closes and things of that nature and it's dispersing, there's a cycle associated with that. So by the time the pandemic hit, I mean, we were closing cases that were already in the pipeline. And so it may have affected maybe the following year a bit, but thankfully we did not feel huge impacts. I know a lot of firms didn't make it, but thankfully we were just not one of those. I think we've always maintained a healthy enough pipeline where we were able to, work through that without having some of the financial challenges that some other firms did in fact face.
Yeah. One of the reasons I rebooted the podcast, I've been doing this podcast for almost a decade, and we kind of stopped. We actually had an issue with Google and we lost the channel for a while. And I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna let it go. And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden everyone was zooming. All of a sudden
Hmm.
attorneys understood how to zoom and
Yep.
whatnot. Have you ever had to argue a case in front of a Zoom jury? Do you think that would be a terrible concept? Because I've talked to some attorneys, and they always say the most important part of arguing a case is when the other side says something and you know that they're wrong, and you can look over at a juror and you can just look them right in the eye and you
Hmm.
make that connection, and they see what you see what they see, and you know you're on the same wavelength. And it's really hard to do that. I mean, we talked about this even in the pre-roll. The we're simulating eye contact. Like I'm looking at my camera right now, or I'm looking
Right,
near you, but we can't share that glance, even if we
right.
can look like we're doing it almost, right? So what's your take on that, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so it would definitely be tough. I think that you would want to make sure that, you could have, the jury in your vantage point because while they're not saying anything, sometimes looks and gestures and things, just, nonverbal communication, sometimes it's bigger than what people say. And I think being able to see that, I think is, invaluable because it lets you know if your strategy is working and you may need to pivot based on what you're seeing with the jury. So I would imagine it'll be incredibly difficult. I mean, a great deal of, depositions, mediations, things like that are held virtually, but a trial, that would be real tough because you lose that ability to interact with the jury in a meaningful way, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's a weird place to be because it is so neat that we have the ability to have a
Right.
face-to-face
But there
conversation. I mean,
has to be a cutoff, I think, at
there
some
has to be a
point.
cutoff. No, I agree as well, 100%. So let me ask you this. Now, you've been practicing for 8 years, and I'm sure in that time that clearly you've built a thriving practice. Clearly, you're doing a lot of stuff right. But I'm a firm believer that you step up to bat enough. Nobody bats 1,000, and I'm sure you've had a couple swings and misses in your career. Or can you let my listeners know about maybe one or two of the moments when you had what you would consider be a failure, and it could be anything from a witness said the wrong thing to a case just didn't get decided the way you thought it would, or anywhere in between, or the paperwork got lost in the mail,
Yeah.
whatever it happened to be. What's one or two of the biggest failures you experienced, but what did you learn from it? How do you carry that forward to
Yeah.
give the best care?
So I had a client who had been involved in an accident. It was a, pretty, serious accident. She had been involved in an accident. And shortly thereafter, she went to Mexico and she was ziplining. And so, we talk to clients about, staying off social media, you know what I mean? But this particular client didn't listen. And so I don't monitor client social media to the extent that, I'm not like a private investigator. I'm not monitoring their social media, right? We have a conversation and I expect them to follow the rules, if you will, and follow my legal advice. Well, anyway, so I send my demand letter and the adjuster calls me and she's like, she sends me this photo and this video and she's like, I think you ought to see this. And so long and short of it is it really hampered the offer. And so just how I speak with clients and just giving them some feedback, now I'm able to use that story as real feedback.
Yeah.
They do go to your social media, they watch, and they're looking for reasons. And if you give them something, there's only so much I can do. If she shows that to a jury, that's not going to be good for us, right? Because if you're doing that, then you weren't really hurt, right? That's going to be the assumption that people made. And so that was a huge lesson for me just in how I communicate with my clients and setting a forum of open communication, but then telling them, and I think I did a good job of that before, but I think I really honed in on, listen, these are some of the things that can happen if you don't follow my advice and being a lot more honest and direct and transparent, because that was a huge loss and it taught me a valuable lesson in that I need to be communicating in a way where I'm setting the proper expectations and I'm telling you if you don't listen, this is what can happen.
Yeah. No, it's neat that it's unfortunate, but it's neat that you have such a direct experience where you can just say, "Hey, here's here's why. Here's what's happened. I know this is
This
the
is
case
why we
because this
tell
this
you to
is what
keep it
happened."
off socials.
We live in such a weird time when everything is digital. I'm going to ask you, well, actually, I'll come back to my other questions in a minute. Let me ask you about that for just a minute. How has technology shifted the practice of law? Do you find yourself dealing with a lot more dash cams and things like that? Is that a
Absolutely.
huge part of what making your cases?
Absolutely, but for the better. Sometimes, most times it's for the better. I've had cases that the tide has turned because people have lied on what's happened. We had a dash cam, and so we were able to, figure out who really was at the stop sign or who really, blew the light or just different things like that. I think so for the better, the dash cams and just the videos that you could get from different businesses, that's really become popular. Where
Yeah.
there are companies that will offer you footage just from different locations that they can tap into and get footage. But I think for the not so positive. I think AI is really changing how clients value the case and almost where they're encouraging and telling the attorney how to do our jobs. I'm not saying Claude isn't great. I'm not saying Chat isn't going to give you good information, but they're not attorneys. And you just have to be careful when you start, trying to be your own attorney on ChatGPT. Just be careful and be wary. Because again, I'm not a hater, if you will, of, AI. I think AI is great, and in using the right context, it's a fantastic tool. But just be careful when you start replacing, professionals, career
Yeah.
professionals with AI. Just be careful.
Yeah. Well, and that's the important thing is it is a tool, right? It's not a
That's exactly
person.
right.
It can't think. We
That's
everyone
exactly right.
it feels like it can think. It can definitely pass what they call the Turing test, right? So it feels like it's a real person because it's really good at regurgitating language. But at the end of the day, that's what it's doing, is it's just
That's exactly
regurgitating.
right. That's exactly right. And so it can't tell you, well, based on my experience, 3 years ago, this is what happened. It can't tell you my scenario about the zip line. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not going to give you real facts and something that attorneys have gone through, something we've seen in trial. And there's just different things we picked up along the way. It can't do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So going back, I asked you about one of your biggest failures, but the flip side of that coin is needs to be asked as well. I'm sure you've had some great successes. You knocked it out of the
Absolutely.
park. What's one or two of the cases you're most proud of? The
Oh,
moments in your
God.
legal career you're most proud of? I know,
Yeah.
pick your favorite child,
So,
right?
yeah. So I'm most proud of a case where our client was a pedestrian and, he was like a construction worker. So you know how they work in the street and they hold up the signs, slow
Mhm.
down, and they were doing some construction. Well, a vehicle came through, blew through the slow downs and hit him. And he was, a pedestrian and very young boy. I think he was 23 at the time that it happened. And anyway, we had to end up filing suit. And anyway, we were able to recover, the full policy limits for him just based on showing, yeah, this is his medical bills today, but this is what his medical bills are going to look like in the future. And so getting a great life care planner to show this is what his medical bills are going to be. We even went a step further, got an economist. Okay, that's today's rates, but tomorrow this is what it's going to be. And really paint that picture. And we were able to resolve the case without having to go to trial, but initially full policy limits appeared to be out of the question. But, with making sure we had good communication with our client, asking him to keep a journal of how things were going, and, just keeping up with his case and monitoring his case, we were able to turn things around because we were able to show while his bills are this today, he's got a lot of care he's going to need in the future, and we have to count that into today's dollars.
Ask you a question that a lot of people wonder about, and it's something I think I know the general gist, but I'd love to hear your talk, especially since you style yourself as the policy limit queen.
That's right.
There's always limits on how much, excuse me, an insurance policy is worth, but you hear about these multi-million dollar settlements. Where does the rubber meet the road? How do you get from, there's a $1.2 million policy limit to a $30 million settlement or whatever it
Yeah,
happens to be?
yeah. So let's talk about that. So while there are policy limits, the insurance company has a duty, right, to act in what's called, to act in good faith and to try to, resolve claims within good faith. And so a lot of times what'll happen is they fail to resolve cases that should be resolved, in good faith. And so then what happens is it goes to trial, and then whatever the jury, renders a verdict for, well, that's slightly different now because we're not only in the world of limits, we could be in a world where we're now saying, hey, you failed to resolve this case. For the policy limits as you could have, you failed to act in good faith. And so now, we're going to file a bad faith claim and now we're going to pursue that. And it just essentially says, hey, listen, you didn't resolve the case you could have. And so essentially what that does is open up the policy, if you will. And so now the policy limits that were there, now those aren't really going to be in place anymore because now we have a different type of situation. You sort of resolved it, then it would have cost you a lot less.
Do you ever find yourself with one client and multiple different suits at the same time? Like maybe one against the insurance company, one against the city or the county or the state or something. I mean, does that happen
Absolutely.
or is it always okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have cases with, a plethora. So it could be, I've, had cases and, we might have cases with, a particular police department in a jurisdiction. Officer didn't have his lights on and hit somebody. He's within the scope of duty. I mean, I love the police officers and I appreciate the job they do, but they can't go around hitting people and causing injuries. They got to be held
No.
accountable. And so we've had, cases with different jurisdictions, different actors. And so it's not just, Jane Doe or Jane Smith that, we have cases against. It could be cities, municipalities. It could really be anyone if there's negligence involved and there's not, some type of immunity there, that it could be anyone.
Um, had another question that was related to that, and as I was prepping one question, that one just flew out of my head. So I might come back to that in a minute. Well, let me go back and I'm gonna ask you one more question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask, actually. I do find that attorneys tend to have some of the best stories of absurdities. You encounter the weirdness of humanity at moments of desperation and all stops in between. What's one or two of the most absurd moments that you've experienced in your legal career so far, or
Yeah, I think probably getting cursed out. And when I say cursed out, I don't just mean, oh, shut up. And, I mean cursed out. Because the client wanted a pre-settlement advance and we don't make the determination. So I don't know if your listeners know or if you know, but we don't make the determination. So, the pre-settlement advance company will call us and they'll say, well, can you give me the facts of the case? And, of course, the client has okayed for us to talk about the case because they want this loan.
yeah,
And so, we tell them the facts and, they may ask us, has liability been cleared? What's the policy limits? What are the injuries? And we're just answering questions. And so one particular client thought that I was declining her loan. And when I say cursed me out, ripped me a new one, you don't care about me and my well-being. And I'm like, ma'am, you have to talk to underwriting. And I just thought it was so crazy that she thought they're not affiliated with us, right? Because law firms cannot loan money. And so we
yeah,
have no affiliation with them. But she just was so hell bent on, you don't want to help me, you don't care about me as a client. And she just wouldn't listen. And I'm like, this can't be what I've signed up for. They're like, this cannot be what the practice of law has become. It can't
yeah.
be. And so
Did you
of
continue
course
to
I was
work
able
with
to calm
her?
her down, but it was, say that again.
Did you continue to work with her, or
I
did
did, but
you
I
part
set a
ways?
clear sign, I set a clear line in the sand. I told her that if she ever spoke to myself or my support staff that way, that we were going to go ahead and drop her case. And I meant it because I'm not going to take abuse, right?
Yeah.
I can understand being upset and frustrated, but I'm not going to take abuse. And I'm not going to ask my staff to be subjected to that either.
That's fair. That's fair. Here's a very important question. I need you to answer this with the utmost of seriousness. Who is your favorite fictional attorney? Do you watch any of the TV shows? Do My Cousin Vinny or Suits or any of those shows? Who's your favorite fictional attorney? Are you an Atticus Finch gal?
Right. So I don't know his name because I'm going to be honest. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm going to be very honest about that. But I was watching Suits for maybe a few episodes because, my husband loves Suits. At one point, he was really into it. And he wasn't really an attorney from what I understand, but the young man that had, I think he passed the bar, but he didn't go to law school. Really smart young guy, the brainiac in Suits, but he wasn't actually like a licensed attorney.
Mhm.
He was my absolute favorite because he could run down the law. He knew the law like no one else. And I'm like, he's not really an attorney. And I just could never get past the fact that he wasn't an attorney. So I'd say he would be my favorite, even though he wasn't really an attorney. I think at some point he might become an attorney in the show, but I didn't follow it, so I don't know.
I think that's Mike Ross. Just at a glance, I
That
think that's
sounds familiar. Yeah, I
who that
don't know
might have
his
been.
name, but I just know that he was a young guy and he wasn't really an attorney, but he was better than any of the other attorneys he ever went up against. Like that.
No, it's totally fair. That's good to know. So let's talk a little bit more about your origin story and your mission, because I think that's
Hmm.
really important.
Yeah,
Again, your father was pressured into an unfair settlement
right.
after a nearly fatal accident.
That's exactly right.
Do you, how does that shape how you approach settlements with your clients? Do you get passionate, like
Hmm.
upset if you're like, this settlement is an insult, or how does that shake out? And how do you know when you've got a fair settlement?
Yeah, so I think there are times when my client is like, I just want the money. One of the stories that I told you earlier about the young man that was hit at several points, he was like, just settle. And I'm like, no, but they're not compensating you fairly. No, we got. And so sometimes, I do get passionate when clients get impatient because that's what the insurance company wants you to do. They want you to get impatient and settle. And I I encourage them, just give me a little bit more time and let us fight. And so I tend to get more, passionate when clients want to rush the process because sometimes you can't rush these things. So I do find myself getting very passionate in those times. And then also I think just ensuring that, I never take more than the client. In the, scenario that I gave you with my dad and the unfair settlement, one of the things that was so unfair was an attorney walked away with a significantly more than he did. And so after his bills were paid and everything, I mean, he got very little relative to the attorney. And so that was I mean, that is the main reason why here at this firm, we just won't take more than the client. I just don't think it's right.
Yeah. To a non-lawyer, the phrase getting the policy limits may sound like the attorney's just asking for, the minimum, but the maximum minimum, if that makes sense. What work goes into proving and making sure that the insurer does in fact tender its full limit, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work that goes into it, right? We have to make sure that, you're treating appropriately, the injuries align with what happened, right? So the mechanism of injury aligns with, what has happened. Property damage is aligned. So there's a lot of things that go into that. And as a client doing their part, I tell clients all the time, it doesn't quite work like this. I was in an accident. This is the policy limits. And because I was hurt and I was in an accident, I'm going to get it. No, there's some work that's going to be, you're going to have to put in some work on your part. And you're going to have to attend these appointments. If you're injured, then you're going to have to go seek medical attention. It's not just going to fall in your lap. And so there are times where clients don't want to do any work and they just expect that the policy limits are going to be handed to them. And so we just have to have, and that's why it's important to be able to really talk to your attorney and you're not just talking to the support staff. Because as an attorney, it's my job to temper those expectations and really explain to you how this process is going to look in a way that you can digest really easily and you can understand. Because some people really do believe that they're just going to get the policy limit because they will, and they don't understand what's happening in the background. But it's my job to educate them. That's what you hired me to do, and so that's my job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Your firm seems to emphasize commercial vehicles. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Obviously, they come with usually commercial policy limits, which are usually higher than standard, automobile limits.
Right.
I get that. With commercial vehicle and trucking claims, there's usually multiple defendants. There's multiple layers of coverage. What is an example of a case that maybe initially looked like an ordinary crash, but then just became more and more valuable the more you investigated who owned it, who operated, who loaded, who maintained, etc. Does that make sense? Like, how does it
Yeah.
evolve?
Yeah. So definitely, because so what we all have to understand is like with trucks specifically, right? The truck may be owned by one party, but the trailer could be owned by a completely different party. And so they could be rentals. And so once you start getting in all of the, nuances, I'll give you a specific. I had a specific case, and there was some work that was done on a truck, right? And so they didn't screw the lunges or the lugs, however that works, the mechanism of how they put the tire back together once they, do some work. And the truck was driving down the highway. The tire blew off, hit my client's car. She hit the median. I mean, a really bad accident. Well, in doing research, we initially thought it would be just the trucking company, but then come to find out it was a completely different company that had done the work. Their limits were significantly higher because they had a different type of policy because they're working on vehicles. And so they have to have some type of coverage in case they mess up. And so it turned from like $1 million policy to like a multi-million-dollar policy, right? So there are times where, based on the actors and where the negligence starts and stops, where your case can change like this.
Yeah. Is there is there a tension between knowing or being known as a policy limit settlement? This is the policy limit queen, right? And but being able to work with insurers so they know that you're generally willing to litigate and willing to work with them, et cetera. How do you manage that tension? Or is there tension there? Or do they just
So,
know
yeah,
when you
there is
walk in the
tension.
room, they know that you're just in charge?
Yeah, there is tension. And believe it or not, as unprofessional as this is probably going to sound, I've definitely had an adjuster tell me on the phone, well, all right, policy limit queen, you won't be getting the policy limits this time. I have really had an adjuster tell me that. And I just laughed and I said, I understand, and it was a case that we weren't going to be able to resolve, pre-litigation. And so we ended up filing a lawsuit. And of course, we got the policy limits. And I thought, how unprofessional would it be to send him that email? Just want to let you know we got it. But I said, okay, no, I can't do that. But I think they know coming in, but the professional ones aren't going to address it because they understand that there's, an appropriate forum to deal with that. And they understand that very likely because I am good at what I do, I probably will end up getting the policy limits, But of course, the case has to make sense. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, that there's a lot that goes into that. There is a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
But we're doing the work. And I think that's the most important thing. I can't tell you how many clients we get from other firms. And they're like, I've never even talked to my attorney. So part of it is too, as the attorney, I have to do my part. I have to know
Yeah.
what's going on with my client. If they're missing appointments, I need to know why. Is something wrong with their car? Does their child's school close at 5 and so they can't get, what is happening? And so that goes back into, am I doing my part as the attorney? It could be something as minuscule as that, but something like that could blow my case. But if I just talk to my client and figure out what's going on, I'm sure there's a workaround. There always is.
Yeah. You definitely have been doing good work. I looked you up online earlier. You guys have over 200 reviews and a 4.9 star rating.
They're all real. They're
That's
all real.
impressive. It's
People never
impressive.
believe me when I tell them. I said, we don't pay people. We're not. They're giving names. They're giving specifics.
Yeah.
People are just happy, and I think the difference is too. And I'll tell you this, Justin. If there's no other takeaway you take away from this other than me being the policy limit queen, and I'm coming for the policy limits every single time. Other than me telling you that my approach to running this firm is customer service. And I think that's where other attorneys are missing the mark. And it's their business. I can't tell them how to run their firm, but we are in a customer service business. And we're still in the legal field, but that doesn't mean because it's law, you're not practicing customer service. I'm here to give exceptional service, and that's what we do here. And I hold my staff to that, to that standard. They need to give every client the platinum standard of care. And I stand by that. And so does my staff because it comes from the top down. And so when people talk about my reviews, what I say is, but we're doing the work. They're not just saying that for shits and giggles. We're doing the work. We're calling them. We're following through. We're doing everything we said we were going to do. And that's part of why we're getting the results we're getting.
Yeah. No, 100%. Let me ask you a more practical question. Evidence. Someone gets in a car accident, truck accident, commercial truck. What evidence disappears the fastest after a commercial truck crash? And what needs to happen in the first 24, 48, 72 hours?
Yeah. So the things that are going to disappear, very conveniently is probably, the logs. So what time they were, driving, what time they stopped. So just an accounting of the logs and probably any video evidence is probably going to be written over, right? So what happened? All trucks and trucking companies have dash cams, to prove whether or not their drivers were at fault. And so when you see that type of thing happen, where things are getting written over, that's probably something incriminating that they don't want you to know. So the most important thing is to, have somebody to go out, evaluate the scene, see what happened, and try to preserve as much evidence as we can. And if not, then we need to bring in an accident reconstructionist if there's some type of dispute about what happened. But pictures speak a thousand words before any, if you're able to take pictures before the vehicles need to be moved. Sometimes the vehicles need to be moved out of the roadway to be safe, and not to impede traffic. So I will say that. But to the extent that you can take pictures before vehicles are moved, sometimes just the positioning of the vehicles will tell you a whole story in and of itself, right? In terms of
Yeah.
what someone's saying's happened. And that's not really possible based on where the vehicles are positioned and how the accident happened. It just wouldn't be possible. So sometimes just taking photos of both vehicles before anything is moved, sometimes that in and of itself can be the turning key to, resolving a case favorably.
Gotcha. I know that Georgia only requires relatively modest liability coverage, if I'm not mistaken.
Unfortunately.
How frequently do seriously injured people discover that the at-fault driver just doesn't have enough insurance? And what should consumers understand about underinsured or uninsured insurance or motorist coverage? And how often is it just, I'm sorry, there's nothing that can be done?
Sometimes, more times than not, and it's very unfortunate because I hate having to tell somebody with, broken bones or permanent injuries that this is a 2550 and they don't drive, so they don't have a car, they don't live with somebody that has UM. I'm not going to say it happens often, but it happens far too much. And so for me, what I, always tell clients is now, if you don't own a car and don't live with somebody that does, and you don't typically drive, that's a little bit of a different situation. So I can't really give you that same advice. But anybody that owns a vehicle in the state of Georgia or any other state that offers UM, they need to have that UM coverage and they need to have it as added on to the liable limits, not reduced by. And usually the difference between reduced by and add-on is probably $3 or $4 a month, depending on the carrier and the type of coverage you have. So we're not talking a significant difference, but it can definitely be the difference between a $25,000 accident, and the coverage and maybe 100 now, based on how much liability they have and how much UM you have. So I tell every client, there's no reason you should not have UM on your policy added on to the liable limits.
Gotcha. Um, all right, I'm going to steer into a slightly different question again here, just because I know we're already coming up on time, and I want to ask you all the questions. I'm not going to get to all the questions, but I'm going to get to whatever I can here. Um, you've earned a business degree, you've earned an MBA. You did both of those before getting your JD.
Yes,
Has your business education given you an advantage in building the firm that law school by itself didn't provide? And
absolutely.
what has been the hardest transition into becoming an actual law firm with, acquiring clients and payroll and all the things?
Absolutely. I'm going to just be very, very blunt when I say this. Law school does not prep you, and this is just my opinion. Law school does not prep you to stare or to veer into any one particular lane,
Hmm.
unless you take the initiative to do, internships or different, clerkships or just different things, and because you know your path. Law school doesn't really prepare you for that. It absolutely does not prepare you for entrepreneurship. And so, absolutely, I leaned into what I had learned in business school to develop a system that works. Not every attorney is going to be appropriate for entrepreneurship. And so I knew, excuse me, going to law school that I had no intention on working at a firm, but yet opening my own. But I knew that going in, but I also understood entrepreneurship. So I think that attorneys have to understand just because you're a great attorney doesn't mean you're going to be a great businesswoman or businessman. And so understanding your strengths and weaknesses and understanding where um, where your strengths are and playing to that. Not every attorney needs to hang their shingle, right? Not every attorney needs to do that. It's okay to work for somebody. It doesn't make you less of an attorney, but maybe you don't want the headache of having to worry about, well, how am I going to make payroll this week, right? And so there's trade-offs with everything. But yes, Justin, it was definitely the schooling and my background. I had been in entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur, since '07, and I've had different business ventures. And so it wasn't law school at all that prepared me to run this business at this magnitude. It was my life experiences, and that's the honest truth.
Gotcha. Policy limit queen. I love it, the concept. It's far more memorable than Atlanta personal injury lawyer, right? Because there's
And it's
those are
trademarked.
yeah. there's more than one Atlanta personal injury attorney, but there's only one
Right.
policy limit queen. What have you learned about developing a legal brand that communicates a real point of difference rather than just attaching a slogan to the firm? And where
Yeah,
can people find out? Like, are you active on social media? Do you
I am
do
active
Instagram
at
and TikTok and all
at
those
the
things?
policy limit queen. Everything is at the policy limit queen. That's all of my handles. And like I said, I'm gonna say it again. It's trademark, so don't get any ideas, people. Don't get any ideas. I will send you a cease and desist. But um, it makes all of the difference because there's so many options here in the Atlanta area. There's so many different attorneys, billboards, radio, this, that. And if you can't stand out and nothing makes you different, then you're not memorable. And I think that, again, but that goes back to just business, right? any business, you have to figure out how to differentiate yourself. And so I understood very early into, my practice, I've got to differentiate myself or I'm going to drown in this, this, pool of personal injury attorneys. And so I figured out what that looked like for me. And I've stayed organic and authentic to myself. And I think because of that, and because of just my personality, people love me on social media because I have an actual personality. I'm not like your typical lawyer. I'm not stuffy. I'm not boring. I got a personality. And all of that works because they're buying into you. But at the same time, I'm going to handle business and I'm going to take your case very seriously. And so I think that, that has absolutely helped. And I'm going to say it again. If you're not standing out, you're lost in the crowd.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. Well, here in a minute, I'm going to ask you my closing three questions. I'll give them to you right now so you can percolate on them, and then we'll jump over
Sure.
and take a look at your site again. Question number one, just so you can think about it, is if I gave you a magic wand and you could change one thing about your firm, or what would you change and why? Number two, we go back in time without breaking the space-time continuum, and you're able to give young Aura some advice. I don't know if that's fresh out of JD, fresh out of MBA, or right after your dad was injured. But at some point, you can go back and give yourself some advice. What would you give yourself? And then number three is my magical pencil, which is almost out of lead, but is just enough to make one change to the law. What change would you make? While you're percolating on those, I'm going to jump over, show your site again, and then read from our sponsor. We're actually going to do something a little bit different today. I've had people ask me to do a slightly different demonstration for our last sponsor because they don't understand it. So I'm actually going to use you as a guinea pig today, if you don't
Okay.
mind,
No, I
with
don't mind.
with your permission.
Of
I am
course.
talking to the lovely Aura Taylor, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears her name, the Taylor Law Firm. That is the Taylor Law Firm, ATL.com. She is obviously has a wonderful head on her shoulder. She is the policy limit queen. You can see her right there. 866-WIN-LAW-1 or the Taylor Law Firm, ATL.com. Use the links down below. And of course, you can also follow her on all of her social medias. I'll try to make sure we have links to at least some of those online. And I'm pretty sure those are actually down here on the bottom of your website, if I'm not mistaken. I saw them somewhere here, I
It's in the
think.
middle. It's in the middle.
Did
Yeah.
I just scrolled right past it, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Right
I
there.
know it's here. Y'all can find it somewhere. Oh, come on, where? Oh,
Right there. Those
there we
photos.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you
there we
go.
go. You've got people that are definitely putting your stuff together very well. You're very well presented, so good on you for that. Like you look professional, which you'd expect you would, but it looks really good. Like I like your site. I like everything about
Thank
it. So
you.
I haven't had a chance to dive into your social media, but I will probably jump over there after this and just take a peek because I
Thank
always
you. I
like to see
appreciate
what
that.
people are doing
I
in
have
the field.
personality, so I'm gonna tell you that right now, Justin. If you want boring and stuffy, don't visit.
That's very fair. Well, I'm going to jump over and read from our last sponsor. This
Sure.
sponsor, you actually might even be interested. I'm going to use you as a guinea pig just to show this because people never
Sure.
believe me when I say these things. Search Sift. Do you know that in the legal arena, if you wanted to bid on keywords like Atlanta personal injury lawyer, sometimes those can cost $200 to $500 or more per click inside of Google. And people say, Justin, that's not true. So I literally pulled it up just out of curiosity. So this is searching just in Atlanta, Georgia for phrases like Atlanta motorcycle accident lawyer, Atlanta wrongful death lawyer. And you can see the top of page one low range for some of these is $900. And it's
Mm,
over, they don't even go beyond 1,000. They don't tell you what it is, but it's
wow.
over $1,000. And the reason for that is it's a fair market, right? And just like personal injury is the fair market coming in to help people, there's a value to the cases. And because of that, lawyers are willing to bid up. It's not that Google has a magical make everything expensive for lawyers button. It's because Google is an auction. And when 5 or 10 or 20 law firms are all bidding on the same high intent search phrases like car accident lawyer in Atlanta, it just drives the cost up and up and up. And here's what most people, most firms, and this works in the non-legal space as well, but I'm talking to an attorney, so I'm going to make it legal today. What most firms miss is that before someone ever clicks on an ad, before they ever see the map pack, before they ever choose a law firm, Google is already shaping the search within the autocompletes. And people say, well, what does that mean? I'm going to show this live just so everyone can see what this looks like. Let's just take Atlanta motorcycle accident lawyer. This is on a good day at 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning might cost you $200 a click if you're lucky. And we do that sort of a search, and you'll notice that Google starts making suggestions. And I'm not going to endorse anybody that's on this list right here. But what SearchSift does is it gets Google to do something like this. We'll use you as an example, or a Taylor. And so now, rather than, in fact, I'm going to delete that and we'll do the search. This is what it would normally look like. You'll have ads at the top. They just got cleared off, but they were there.
Mm-hmm.
Ads in the middle, ads at the bottom. These are $100, $200, $300 keywords. But what winds up happening is when Google auto suggests you, all of a sudden you're the only thing on page one. And now people see you and only you. And of course, you have been everywhere. There's your Instagram, so people can find at thepolicylimitqueen.com. There's your Facebook. That's probably not you, but well, no, that is you.
That's me.
Or heck, is that you? Okay.
Hmm.
It's a different handle, but there we go. Anyway, so that's the concept behind SearchSift. And the neat thing about SearchSift is they don't actually charge to do this. They do this for free for all of their clients. They will rank you in Google. They only get paid a small amount of money whenever they send you traffic directly from Google from the phrases that you're wanting. And rather than spending, 100, 200, 300, 500, or $1,000 per click inside of Google, you can get clicks for under $50 with SearchSift. And again, it's completely free to get set up, which is really neat.
I
So
might have to check
I endorse
SearchSift
them
out.
wholly. I endorse them wholly because it's my company. But it's a really cool thing, and I like showing people what it is. And people always say, Justin, I don't understand it, so explain it to me. So that, in a nutshell, is what it is. SearchSift helps you get into Google even before the search is done. So you're not competing in ads, you're not competing in SEO. You're simply being found. You are sifting out your competition. That's SearchSift,
And you said this is your company?
syft.com. It is my company. So
Okay.
one of the reasons I run the podcast is it does let me, market my own stuff as well. So every so often I throw it in there, but I think it's a really cool concept. And again, we're so good at what we do and we're so confident in what we do. We literally will get you ranked for free. And then we work kind of like Google. We connect with your Google Analytics and Bing Webmasters. Anyway, this has become a much longer ad read than I meant for it to go. So I apologize in
Well, I
advance.
got interested.
Well, there we go. I mean, hey, mission accomplished, I guess. So visit our sponsors. We have Rank with News. We have Groove Pages, which is now becoming whatever it is .gg, and I've totally blanked on the new name of them, whatever. And then, of course, searchshift.com. And, of course, you should also visit Aura's website as well. And, again, we'll have links to all of those down below, thetaylorlawfirm.com. Or, sorry, the Taylor Law Firm
Or
ATL.com.
you
We'll have
could go
links.
to thepolicylimitqueen.com. It'll take you
Or
there
you
as
can go
well.
to the policylimitqueen.com, which I think is a much easier one to remember. You don't have
Yeah,
to remember the little
don't,
ATL.
I never push the Atlanta one. I mean, it'll take you there, but thepolicylimitqueen.com. That's it.
It's your principal. Now, does that just forward the
Yeah, type it in. It's going to take you to the same page.
policylimitqueen.com?
Hmm.
Let me make sure I typed that in correctly here. It's just going to forward over. Yeah, there we go. Well, you know what? I might include that one. If I remember, I'll have my assistant throw that down there as well. And we'll put both those down there. I do think that's a much catchier title as well.
Yes.
So I like it. I like it. All right, let me get off of this here. And there we go. All right. So, Aura, let me ask you my three closing questions. Question number one is
Yes.
simply this. You've got a thriving practice right now, but everything can always be improved. I have a magic wand and I give it to you, and you can make one change right now. What would you change about your firm if you could change anything?
Probably, probably, probably some of the people. I probably um want to ensure that I had the best in every single role, in every single category, what I deem to be the best. Not saying that my people aren't great, but some people are just like anything in life. You're always going to have overachievers and you're going to have people that just are mediocre. And so I like the best. I think the best is what, your people are what's going to propel you forward. So having the best means a lot. The
Yeah.
best.
All right. Well, I wish you the best in getting the best. Good luck with that. Question number two, we go back in time and let's just say fresh out of law school. That seems like a good place because this might be advice that would work for other attorneys as well. But what is the one piece of advice, if you could give yourself just one piece of advice, and go back in time, meet young Aura, what advice would you give yourself fresh out of law school?
That you can. I think that growing up in a space where I didn't know any attorneys that looked like me, um, I think there's a certain amount of doubt that you put that plays in your head, like, I'm not smart enough, I can't do that, or but I think what I would tell her is you can and you will. And I developed a certain amount of, confidence, but that came with time and over the years, right? Because
Mhm.
confidence is just knowing that you have the ability. And so I think that just reassuring my young self. Like, you can do it. You're smart enough. You can. I think that speaks volumes because if you don't think you can do something, you're never going to do it.
No, absolutely. By the way, it is, and I think I knew this going into this, but it is August, and August is Black-owned Business Month,
Mm.
or National Black Business Month. I think is what's the official title of it. So, congratulations on that. You clearly did do it,
Thank
and
you.
that's amazing and wonderful. And so, yeah, I wanted to make sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. We're recording this on the 7th of August. This should be out before August is up. So, to anyone listening, happy National Black Business Month as well to all of you. So, question number 3. All right, this is my magical pencil, and it's got like this much lead in it. The lead is almost gone because I've given it to so many attorneys to make changes.
Yep.
So you got to be sparing with it, but you can strike one law from the book. You can edit a law that's on the books, or you can add one new law. What single change would you make, or if I gave you my magical pencil?
Change the policy limits. 25,000 isn't enough. That's not
Yeah,
enough. And people are really getting hurt, and there's not enough money to help them change those policy limits. And I'm not saying that everybody has to have $1 million policy. I mean, that's not practical, but I think
yeah.
25 is far too low. I'd change them. I change them. At
I'm
least a
curious.
100,000. Everybody must carry at least $100,000. If you want to drive and you want to afford yourself to the benefit of the roads, get more insurance.
Yeah. Do you think it would make sense to adjust it up, but then also have it like inflation adjusted, like every 3 to 5 years they revisit it, what's the inflation been, and then adjust it again?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you
think
think,
that's fair. I think you always have to look at, things for inflation, right? I think that's fair. But I
yeah,
think also too, and I don't want to get into a rabbit hole and I don't want to go down the wrong road with this because we can easily go down the wrong road. But I also think that, the insurance companies are pocketing massive profits. So I think that, even if they came down on the rate enough, because what they say is, well, if we come down, people won't be able to afford it. You can come down on the rate and people can have more insurance. And so I think there's two parts to that. But I think the limits got to change. 25 is just not enough.
gotcha. No, I agree with that 100%. So, well, it has been a wonderful hour getting to talk with you. We're already
Yeah.
at the bottom of the hour, and again, I want to be respectful of your time. I do always like to let my guests have the final words. So, or are there any last words of wisdom or parting thoughts you'd like to leave our
You
listeners
know,
with?
I just want to thank you, for having me. I hope that your guests were moved by something I said. If you like something I said and you learned something and I, gave you some tidbit of information, check me out on my socials, go to my website, and I hope that you never need me. But if you do, then give me a call, here to talk to you. I'm not going to charge you to have a conversation.
I've known so many injury attorneys say I'd rather be out of business, but since injuries keep happening, I guess it's a good thing that I'm here.
I get right, right. So I hope you don't need me, but if you do, I'm here, so that type of thing.
Absolutely. Well, this has been the Attorney Post. As always, I've been chatting with the lovely Aura Taylor, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears her name. Again, the policylimitqueen.com or the Taylor Law Firm ATL.com. You can also give them a call at 866 Win Law 1. As always, though we do talk about a lot of legal issues on this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on a matter that you need help with. However, if you're in the Atlanta area, if you're in Georgia and you've been injured, I think that Aura and her firm would be a wonderful resource for you. And as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any, again, it's a free consultation and there's nothing to pay. And she either wins or you don't pay anything. So know what your rights are. If you've been injured, you should always call an attorney immediately. They'll walk you through all the things you need. I've seen attorneys meet you at the hospital and help you with paperwork and everything else. So I always tell
Absolutely.
everybody, if you've been injured, call an attorney. Uh,
Absolutely.
PI law firms sometimes get a bad rap, the ambulance chase or whatnot, but it's a stopgap. You guys are there and you're helping people, and I absolutely love that.
Absolutely.
As far as the podcast goes, if you guys are listening to this on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, etc., feel free to rate us down below. If you are watching on Google or YouTube, we always appreciate a like, a subscribe, a share, leave a comment down below if you learned something new in this podcast. But the most important thing you can do to help this podcast grow is simply this. If you know someone who would benefit from the knowledge found in this episode, particularly someone who lives in Georgia who's been injured maybe, please feel free to share this with them, because if they don't know their rights, they don't have any either. And the number one way to know your rights is to get legal counsel. So until
Right.
next time, this is Justin West with the Attorney Post. Thank you guys very much for listening and have a good one. Stay safe out there.